Alright, I might be wrong about this, but I think the setting says it all. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is another art chat today. When I finished last week's video, I thought that there is actually another technique that I wanted to talk to you about how to stay inspired, right? Maybe even more than a technique of how to stay inspired, it is actually something that I think all artists must do on a very regular basis in order to hone their craft. We are, of course, talking about why reading is very important for artists. Reading is, of course, very important for everyone, and I am biased. I did literary studies, so there, I admitted it, I am biased, but hear me out. There are so many videos you come across on YouTube that focus on teaching artists how to use social media, how to, schedule some time every day or at regular intervals in the week to manage your social media content and how to stay consistent and how to put it to good use in order to drive traffic to your website and things like that. Well, while this is true, of course, in a way, I think that you should also focus on ways of honing your skills, because it is all very well to know how to drive an audience to your website and how to, make promotions and how to sell your artwork. But if you're not honing your skills throughout your career, then it's not going to work, is it? Then, of course, you become better through exercises, through doing it basically, year in and year out, you automatically become better. It is true, but I find that what really drives you to another level in your art is your mind, is the way that you process the information that you're taking in. Because, of course, when you are in the field doing painting on plein air, or when you are painting a portrait of a sitter, or when you are painting your still life, what is really individual and very subjective to everyone is the way that your mind, your brain processes what it sees into a piece of art that is yours and yours alone, right? And the way that our brain works and is very different one from another, and this is why two artists never create the exact same artwork, and even if you would recopy one of your artworks, it would not be the exact same, right? It's not only due to you not being a machine basically and not having the exact same brushstroke, but it's also that your mindset, how you feel, everything that is going on in your life plays into it. If we can agree on that, we might also agree on the fact that what has the most impact on the quality of your artwork is your mindset. So what you have to do is not only work your manual skill and social media and stuff, but also up here, the way your mind works. And I think that reading for artists is an extraordinary tool for doing exactly that. When you think about it, when you want to paint or make a sculpture or carve a block of lino, you have a message, be it conscious or subconscious, but it is there. And it is so strong for you that you kind of have to get it out of your system in form of an artwork, right? You have a relationship with the subject of it. So confronting what you think about it to what other people think about it or wrote about it, right, is a very interesting exercise, because it can either reinforce you in the way that you see things or turn it topsy-turvy or, make it question it. And I feel that this must have an impact of how you do things creatively, right? And this illumination that you might have after having read a book that impacts you, that impacts your art, is, I feel, in some cases as strong as an external event happening to you. It's just that it's happening in your mind and it changes the way that you see things. To illustrate what I'm telling you here, I will once again take a very personal experience to give it as an example. As you all know, I'm very well focused on Scottish landscapes, right? So I've been to Scotland like 6 times now. It's something that touches me really on a very deep level. So obviously, other than going to Scotland and talking to people and experiencing the landscape and hiking, I also read a lot about the land, the culture, the history of it, and it nourishes and completes the impressions that I get when I'm there. But not only that, it actually changes the way that I see things, so it helps me understand what I'm seeing much better, and this automatically shifts the focus of my experience there. For instance, let's take the sheep that you are seeing in Scotland a lot, right? It seems quite an innocent subject, right? Because you see a lot of cattle in general when you're hiking in the UK. But then I read a book about the clearances a while ago that explained that 1792 was known as the year of the sheep in Scotland. After yet another Jacobite revolution, there was quite a list of suppressive measures that were taken against the Scots at that time. There was also a British attempt of re-industrializing Scotland. So they introduced sheep in big numbers in the Scottish Highlands as a way of reorganizing industry or lack thereof. So actually sheep are not at all common for Scotland on a large scale of things from a historical view. And it's very interesting because it is something that has become a very integral element of the landscape there. So having this knowledge completely transformed the way that I see those landscapes with sheep in Scotland. It then becomes more a symbol of the profound transformation that Scotland endured after the clearances and due to the Jacobite revolution. So basically, when I'm painting there, this quite idyllic site obtained a completely other meaning for me, which is of course impactful for the way that I paint the landscapes of Scotland and what I focus on when I'm there. So what I'm saying, it is very important for artists to not stay put, intellectually speaking, and always challenge your ideas and always be on a search for new information about the focal point of your art or the genre that you are most interested in or the techniques. It can be all sorts of things. So I imagine you already understood that the point of this video will not be a reading list that I will provide you or particular recommendations that will work for everyone. My personal example and some advice on how to find interesting reads for you that will impact your art. So what you see here and here and here is a non-complete stack of books that I brought back home from my last trip to the UK, right? It's only the last trip. So this pretty much illustrates my point and proves to you that I'm not only recommending you to read a lot, but I actually do it myself. So it works really well for me. I'm really convinced that it might work well for you guys as well. I'm going to talk to you about the 3 categories that I think might be helpful for you to search for books that might interest you. First category is of course fiction, because it helps your mind wander. I think I don't even need to go into it that much because I assume you guys already read fiction and you understand the value that it can have for your creative process, because it is the very beneficial loop of art, you know, where one type of art inspires another type of art. So it helps the creative loop of all types of artists kind of go on forever. And I'm not talking about illustrations. I'm not thinking of it helpful in the way that you might want to illustrate a fiction that you read. This is not the point, but It might provoke an image in your head that inspires you and that you can fit into your art. It's just another occasion to plunge yourself into the collective creativity, maybe. So you might read a book, think about a scene, and then maybe the decor or the setting might inspire you and produce an image in your mind that will be the subject of your next artwork. Who knows? The second category is interesting in the way that I think it's not very popular. And I'm talking about artists' autobiographies, or more like artist notes. There were a lot of painters from different countries and from different backgrounds and different art movements, right, who wrote extensively. And not only about their techniques, although this is a very interesting part of it as well, especially if it is a painter that you are particularly inspired by. It can be a treasure trove of information about how to mix pigment, or how this or that painter achieved a particular effect in his artwork that you always wondered of how he got it done, right? But I'm talking mostly about, well, their philosophical reflections, maybe, this kind of notes, where basically they explain what art means to them and what makes a great painting, or, you know, what one should look for in art when creating, or what to focus on. So it gets pretty theoretical, I give you that, but it also helps you think about what you want to achieve with your art. What is it that you contribute to what is already there, you know? So me, I found this one for Odilon Redon that I already told you about in my last video, and it's called, well, it's in French, à soi-même, so basically to yourself. I can't tell you whether it has already been translated to English. I will look up, and if I find anything, I will leave the link in the description. But basically, these are his manuscripts that were found upon his death. Notes he scribbled throughout the years. It is incredible because it gives you an insight into what was really important for him and what he was aiming for as an artist, as well as some critiques of other contemporary artists, well, contemporary to him, right? What he thought about their work. And it's pretty interesting because in the way that he criticized some of them, you also kind of, through this negative, you get what he is that he was looking for and what was important to him. It's really interesting because it makes you question what you are doing and what you are looking for, and explains also very well why he was painting in the way that he painted. So I'm not going to be able to resume the whole book to you, of course, so I'm not going to go further into details, but you get the concept. If you can put your hand on a book or on a manuscript of a painter that you particularly like, this makes for an incredible read. Then there's also, well, kind of a derivative category to this, because Odilon Redon, once again, also wrote fiction, and this is another level of interesting because, well, obviously I'm just in admiration of his talent, because it means that he painted and he wrote as well. And if you take into consideration that he was also playing the violin and the piano in his free time, well, that makes for an amazing life, right? Anyway, it is very interesting as well to see how the aesthetic that one painter has can play into other types of artistic production that he has. So basically, to see how coherent it is in his, well, style of writing as compared to the way that he painted, the subjects that he chose for his literary work, but also for his paintings. So this again makes you think about the concept of his aesthetics more, and maybe about yours as well. And I think art is not cerebral, of course, but it should be conscious. So whatever you are doing with your colors, with your techniques, it should be purposeful. And more you are conscious of what your purpose is, the better you automatically get, I think. And now we are moving to the third category, which are, of course, artist albums, but not artist albums as albums that are focused on one particular artist, but rather albums that focus on a theme or a genre. This is what I find most interesting because it allows some space to develop a philosophical approach about what the genre is supposed to be, or how different painters represent the same thing, what their different approach is, and how you would fit into the history of this genre or the representation of this particular thing in the history of art, right? I think it's maybe ambitious, but... And the two books that fall into this category are these two, and they kind of focus more or less on the same subject. This one I brought from my recent UK trip, and it is called Places of the Mind and focuses on British watercolor landscapes. It is very interesting because not only has it allowed me to discover artists that I didn't know before, but the whole historical approach is pretty interesting. It's a reflection upon the place of watercolor landscapes in the heritage of British landscapes, right? Because back then, watercolor didn't have the same prestige and the love of the general public that landscape paintings in oil had. And the authors are not only questioning the legitimacy of this approach, of course, but they're quite frankly proving the contrary, how gradually throughout history they obtained a better place on the art market or became more important. It is a historical expedition, of course, but not only, because it shows how our perception can shift throughout ages and how one medium in particular can come out of the shadows and move into the spotlight. I think it's important to always keep that in mind and remember that, in a way, art doesn't follow any rules, and sometimes you are limiting yourself by considerations that are not really legitimate. Now, the other album that I wanted to talk to you about is Paysage, fenêtre sur la nature. So, landscape, a window on nature. I'm pretty sure that this exists in an English version. I will check up on that and link it below if I find it. But this is a catalogue that was created for an exhibition that took place in France. Captain Obvious here. But once again, more than just the new artwork that this catalogue allowed me to discover, because I completely didn't know that there was this exhibition going on. Anyway, what I found particularly interesting is the whole debate about what the genre is about. And it was quite surprising because actually the authors explained how it's not at all as obvious as it seems to be. And they start by explaining the origin of the word itself. The point here, and it is a French point of view in a way, because they explain that the term paysage, which translates to landscape, was a term that was coined only in the Renaissance period to describe this new genre, because François Ier called on all of his artists, his painters of his court, in order to redecorate his new palace and to redecorate it with representations of the surrounding landscape. The problem is, in French, paysage is now used both to designate the genre in art, but also for the surroundings. But this was not at all the case in Renaissance, right? So this is a word that was primarily a technical term, somehow a word from the art world became the most used word to describe the surroundings. And this is really interesting because normally you say that art imitates nature, although here we have, linguistically speaking, the exact opposite actually. So it shows that the way nature was perceived has changed as well, right? What is even more interesting is that this was not the case for other languages, right? And for other cultures, like in German, you don't see this evolution of sense within the word. It would always have been the same word to refer to both reality and artwork, right? Or the surroundings and the genre, which I suppose must have been the same for the English language as well, because it's Landschaft in German and it's landscape in English, so they must have a common origin, right? So this actually is more than just a catalogue for an exhibition. It also allows a debate about the history of a genre and what it represents, how it came to be, and the meaning of it all. I mean, I still can't get over the fact that the landscape was not perceived as something to be worth painting, that it has not been a genre before, that it came so much into spotlight that it actually introduced a whole new word to use to describe your surroundings. I find this crazy. What I mean by all of this is try to find those types of books, those types of read that are relevant for the subject that you are focusing on while creating your art. It might be landscape, it might be urban representations, or myth and legends, or texture in art, or colors in art. It might be all sorts of things, but please do look out for those books, because it can really make you think and can revolutionize the way that you are seeing, well, the subject that you are focused on, right? And it might change your relation to this subject, but can also help you find your place within the collective creation and see where you belong to. I can't tell you what will happen when you read those books, right? So you will have to try it for yourself and see what happens. Right, and on this note, your favorite bookworm here is going to end the video, and I just hope that it was new to you and helpful, and that I might have tickled your interest here and make you curious about what is out there in the book world that might help you make different art, better art, more conscious art. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. It won't be an art chat, I promise you. Have a nice morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Cheers!